And welcome to Retroscoping, a podcast tracing the evolution of feature animation. We are journeying through the films of the studio that started it all, Walt Disney Studios. We made it to film number 10!
We're number 10!
Melody Time.
Is number 10.
Not us.
Yes, Melody Time is number 10.
Yes, well, first, I'm your host, Alexa.
And I'm Nathan.
And Nathan, why are we qualified to do this?
Well, I actually am from Texas, and as a native Texan, I am officially certified to talk about anything related to Texas. And this movie actually has a very long sequence set in Texas. So, therefore, I am an expert.
I'm so glad that we have you here today.
Thank you, thank you. I'm glad to represent the great state of Texas.
It is the longest, biggest portion of this movie, just like Texas is the biggest portion of America.
There's a great map that the Cowboys draw of Texas in the Pecos Bill sequence at the end of this film, where the U.S. is mostly Texas, and then there's some other states sort of scattered around it, and that is an absolute 100% accurate representation of how Texas thinks of itself.
Also, the best part about that illustration is that you can see the other states being shoved off to the side, like they are crinkling as Texas continues to spread and push them out. It's quite great. Anyway, Melody Time was released May 27th, 1948, and it started at the Astor Theater in New York Times Square.
Cool.
It had a budget of $1.5 million, and just for some context, that is as much as Snow White's budget.
Well, I mean, this one looks expensive, actually.
Yeah. And it's also more than either Bambi or Dumbo's budgets.
Huh. I wouldn't have thought of Bambi as being a low-budget film.
Yeah, it was under $1 million. Huh. It doesn't look like it.
No. Well, I will say this. Bambi looks like $1 million.
You're so funny.
That was low-hanging fruit. This film also contains low-hanging fruit.
It does. Also, they took a lot of things that they learned, I think, on Bambi and stuck it into this movie. Like, there is a lot of deer and quails running. Like, there might be 3 sets of quail babies following their quail mama, just like in Bambi. There's at least 2 I can confirm. There might have been a 3rd.
Actually, surprisingly varied styles of those animals as well throughout the course of this film.
This is another package film. Some people would argue it's the last, but I think we would argue that Ichabod and Mr. Toad...
The next film, which is just 2 long pieces.
Yeah, but, I mean, considering that Fun and Fancy Free is also 2 longer pieces stuck together, we're gonna say this is not the last package film. We're sorry.
We're so close.
I know.
But actually, this one wasn't so bad.
It was an improvement.
I definitely liked it the most of these compilation films that we've seen, and it's the one that felt the most like Fantasia, although it's nowhere near the heights of that film.
You know, what's funny is that a couple of the segments that are in this film were meant for another Fantasia, and since they didn't really get that, this became their home. So it's kind of more of a popular music Fantasia. It's 7 musical segments.
And I think that's what Make Mine Music also sort of aspired to be, was a popular music Fantasia, but Make Mine Music has the unfortunate quality of not being good.
That was a large challenge for that movie. Yes. I mean, to be fair, I think at the time, people watching Melody Time were not terribly thrilled with it either. It definitely made money, so that's good. But I found a really hilarious New York Times article reviewing it when it came out, and they were not kind.
Ooh, I love bad reviews. Tell me all about it.
I mean, mostly they just spoke to how mediocre the entire thing was. But perhaps let's not start with ragging on the movie.
Right. I was going to be complimentary of this one.
Yes, you were.
In general, I mean, I feel like this, after a period of Disney trying to make low-budget, low-investment features, this feels like they are getting some creative energy back. The designs in this film and the various segments are interesting and dynamic and lovely. The integration of live action and animation is much more sophisticated and smooth. And actually, I think this is a better restoration than a lot of the ones we've been watching thus far. On Disney Plus, it actually looks really crisp and bright and clear.
To be fair, we only recently switched to Disney Plus.
That's true.
We had been watching a lot of these on DVD up to this point, and the quality that you can achieve, I think, through streaming and being able to host a much nicer version of it and in your Disney cloud in the sky is more than what you can fit on ye old DVD of yesteryear.
At some point coming up soon, Disney will, in fact, put their own cloud in the sky.
As long as they put a castle on top of it, I'm totally cool with that.
Claiming it here, the next Walt Disney World expansion will be Walt Disney World Cloud City.
Oh, what about Disneyland Space?
That'll happen someday. 200 years from now. That will be the thing that 5-year-olds beg their parents to take them to.
I want to go to orbit. All right.
Let's all visit Asteroid Disney.
Well, let's jump in.
Yeah, let's.
The first short is Once Upon a Wintertime, and it is absolutely beautiful. Mm-hmm. The designs are fantastic. They have
a really unique look.
They have a heavy influence from Mary Blair. This is they are really trying to translate her really unique style and put it on screen.
Yeah, I was thinking that as I watched it. It was sort of like, this is what would happen if you tried to animate Mary Blair rather than using her as a color palette.
That is precisely what they did. There was this guy, Ken O'Connor, who kind of led the charge to have animators draw in the stylized manner. And the background artist, Art Riley, in this segment painted the sets in Mary's style. The only question I have is, why doesn't the girl have a nose?
Well,
why have we decided that noses are so marring of the face that, women shouldn't have them to be cute?
It stands to reason that if a small nose is cute, no nose is even cuter.
Yeah, I feel like it's really unfair to our body parts to decide that, one is just too large, no matter how normal-sized it is. Mm-hmm. Better to just remove it entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure the gendering of these designs is all that great.
Yes, but the horses are beautiful. I love
those horses. Are the best horse designs.
They are gorgeous. They have these beautiful long legs, and they look like a fairy tale. And I wish those had been Cinderella's horses. They are better than Cinderella's horses. Also, what makes them better than Cinderella's horses is they help save. Apparently her name is Jenny. They have names. They have names. Jenny and Joe. So the horses also save Jenny with help from the squirrels because Joe is useless.
Yeah, I do feel like, coming out of this short, my takeaway was that the moral here is that women are useless, men are buffoons, but horses are awesome.
All you need is a horse. A horse will be your best friend.
So, yeah, it was basically just describe what happens in this short. It's...
Oh, no. There's, no plot whatsoever. It's beautiful, but the story's a little thin.
Like the ice
that she falls through. Yes.
It's a couple enjoying a winter time.
No, here's the summary. 2 people go ice skating. They quarrel, so she has to fall through ice. Animals save her because the boy is useless. They live happily ever after.
The end.
Yeah, the end.
It does actually do a surprisingly good job transitioning from idyllic, wintertime pastiche to action adventure. It's quite dynamic.
Yeah, I suppose. The thing I like best about this is the designs that we have already talked about. The surprising way that the animals are actually utilized, because I didn't see that coming, but everything else was a huge cliche.
Wait, how are the animals utilized?
Oh, just that they are the heroes of the story. That doesn't normally happen. Normally they go for help. Mm-hmm. But in this case, they just are the help. They're just like, well, he can't do anything, so I guess we'll have to do it. We're squirrels, but we'll take care of it.
Mm-hmm. Although the rabbits are also not terribly useful.
They are doing the exact same thing as the humans, and I don't understand why they're there.
Just to prove that
they're just shadows.
Bumbling, dysfunctional relationship between man and woman is true, both of mankind and of the animals.
Yeah, they're just shadows of what the humans are doing, though. Mm-hmm. I almost said what the adults are doing. Because obviously the rabbits are children. They are not. This is one of the things that also happened to be in the Disney VHS sing-along video for the Christmas time, so that's the only reason I've seen a lot of this footage before. Mm-hmm. And I have now officially seen where it came from, and I'm good. My favorite part, though, is at the very end. You go back to the pictures, the two, like, the Victorian couple's photo that's kind of hinged, and you have, you know, her little portrait and his little portrait, and his comes alive, kind of like a Harry Potter portrait, and he closes them together so that, you know, in their little picture frame they would be kissing. That always delighted me very much as a kid.
I will say, despite the fact that the faces here are extremely simple, there's actually a really nice moment at the end after Jenny kisses Joe at the end, where he actually manages a fairly complex and interesting and surprising facial expression, given that his face is a couple dots and a mouth.
That's true. I mean, overall, I think we saw such a uptick in the animators' prowess in this movie. Like, when we get to Johnny Appleseed, I was floored by how fluid that animation was. So, I mean, if you have people who can do Johnny Appleseed, of course you can have people who can make Joe emote.
Yeah, you could really feel throughout this film just the animators getting their mojo back, feeling the joy of animation. Maybe it's because the army has moved out of their studio and like they get to spend some money on the films again. But it's really lively. The colors are bright and beautiful. The shorts move along quite briskly, quite nicely.
Speaking of which, Bumble Boogie is the next short, which is extremely fast.
Extremely.
It's a very jazzy rendition of Rimsky-Korsakov's Flight of the Bumblebee, and just listening to this, it sounds exceedingly hard to play, so...
It is the opposite of the Calm app.
Yes, that is entirely true. It's still delightful. It's not as bad as The Rite of Spring in Fantasia that just turned me inside out with anxiety, but like this was more fun and peppy and delightful to watch. But the person who is making this incredible feat possible is Jack Fina at the piano in a recording of Freddie Martin and his orchestra. Jack Fina is said to have possessed the 10 most talented fingers in radio. So without him being able to play the super jazzy, super fast rendition, I don't think it would have been the same short.
That makes me wonder, is there an X-Men character whose mutation is that he has extra fingers, and does that make him the world's best piano player?
I don't know that the extra fingers would make him the best piano player, but perhaps having extra hands with fingers would.
Yeah, okay, I definitely know there are X-Men characters that have... There is a terrible 90s X-Men character named Forearm.
No.
Whose power is that he has 4 arms. Naturally, he went on to be a goon villain in a mutant liberation front, but he really should have gone into a career in the piano.
He still can. Just like...
He's going to reinvent himself in prison.
The ruffian in Tangled who just wants to be a concert pianist. But you know that guy. I don't think he has a name in Tangled. I think outside of Tangled, like, he has a name. Like, they don't call him by name in the script.
Yep, can't help you there.
Hookhand. Might very well be his name.
That's possible.
But I really like the flight of the bumblebee. I mean, it literally just is a couple minutes of a bumblebee flying into a bouquet of flowers that have all turned into musical instruments and trying to escape them because they all seem to be pursuing him with a vengeance for some reason. He made them very angry.
Yeah, you have to be very quiet when the orchestra plays. If you're making your buzzing noise, they're going to come for you.
I mean, that's what happens when you leave your cell phone on.
Yeah. Even when you leave it on vibrate. If there's just a hint of buzzing in that orchestra hall, the piano keys will come assault you. I don't love the design of the bumblebee in this, but...
Oh, it's so not about the bumblebee.
But the way that the flowers manage to be both flowers and musical notes and musical instruments all at the same time, the way that the black and white designs of the piano keys form all these different shapes. There's a really beautiful piano key cobra who chases after the bee at one point. There's just all of these wonderful little ways of taking the silhouettes and shapes of things and bending them just ever so slightly so that they begin to appear like something else and morph in and out of one form to another, to create this just spectacular visual. It's like a visual soundscape.
Exactly, and this is one of the shorts that was definitely intended for another Fantasia, which is why it feels
like it, yeah.
The most like Fantasia. Very surreal, very abstract, tons of color and sound, all matching up with exactly what's happening on screen, and it coming originally from a classical piece and retrofitting the animation on screen to that.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely gorgeous. I love how crazily but fluidly you transition from one moment to the next. It's like you don't transition to different scenes. It's like someone is just rolling a series of sets by you, and it's absolutely fabulous, and everything is interesting to look at. And
that's actually, I think, one of the things that we'll come back to in a few of the next few shorts as well, is the transitions between elements of these shorts are actually really well planned and thought out and executed and kind of cool and innovative. Yeah, I think that I would have been really excited to see an evolution of the Fantasia concept that is a bit more flexible in terms of genre and style. Like, this is a classical piece, but they've done a jazz rearrangement of it, which creates a kind of new and fresh feeling of the piece and gives the animation a little more to work with, a little more energy, a little more dynamism to work with. So, and I guess there was a Rhapsody in Blue segment in Fantasia 2000.
Oh.
Which functions on a similar level.
I've only seen that movie once.
We'll get to it someday.
Yeah. Despite my love for Fantasia, I do not have a similar love for Fantasia 2000, so we'll get there. Well, next up is The Legend of Johnny Appleseed.
This one's actually really great.
It's gorgeous. It's fantastic and amazing. And most of the other shorts in this film are the song long. It is one song. This one is a short with 3 or 4 songs in it. Yeah, it's got 4 songs.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly well-developed piece. It opens with the classic Disney fairy tale book motif that you'd expect from a Disney fairy tale movie. And so it does a really nice job making this piece of American folk tale feel like a Disney fairy tale. And it does a really good job kind of marshalling the material, giving it some surprising, interesting twists, and just making it all so beautiful.
Yep. So you might remember learning about Johnny Appleseed in elementary school. I know that I did, I just don't remember much about him, so I needed the little refresher that the real Johnny Appleseed was named John Chapman, and he lived from 1774 to 1845. The thing is that when Disney decided to make this short, he didn't want to base it on the real John Chapman. He wanted to base it around the legends that had built up around Johnny Appleseed, which is obviously much more fun than just translating a textbook to the screen.
Yes, I imagine Disney would have had some trouble explaining the particular theology of Swedenborgianism, which was John Chapman's actual weird sect of Christianity based on a, I believe, Danish man who decided that he alone could visit heaven and hell and report back on his visions.
That is convenient.
Yeah.
Extremely convenient.
So, in this short, Johnny Appleseed is just sort of a generic good Christian fella.
Johnny Appleseed is also a Disney princess. I kid you not. So he has animal friends, like a magical relationship with animals.
That is true.
They all help him pick the birds help him pick the apples. He has a bow in his hair, an I want song at the beginning of the short, and lo and behold, the I want song brings him a fairy godfather.
Yeah, he's a fairy godmother, it's true.
Godfather. He can be a godfather.
Do angels have gender? I submit to you, they do not. All right, okay. So he has animal friends. He has an I want song. He wears a bow in his hair. Mm-hmm. He has a fairy godfather.
What more do you want from me? He is a Disney princess.
This is a very compelling case. Yes.
This is 4 things.
But...
And also he gets out of scrapes by making friends with animals. Like, as we progress and he starts to walk across America and, you know, things are about to get bad for him, he makes friends with animals and that solves his problems.
But does he find true love?
With the animals. I'm not saying his romantic love, but he finds great companionship and a love for apples. If that's not true love, I don't know what.
I suppose in a world with Moana, that is no longer a requirement for a Disney princess.
Thank you, Moana. Thank you.
All right. I accept your argument. He is a Disney princess.
Quote unquote true love does not bring fulfillment necessarily.
No, in this case, planting apple trees brings fulfillment.
However, I just don't think that this job pays very well.
I feel like...
I thought of another thing.
Okay. Lay it on me.
Just like Rapunzel, he goes walking around with cookware and barefoot.
That's true. All right. There's no arguing. You are correct. He is a Disney princess.
I win. Also, his eyes look like Disney princess eyes, and he's animated so beautifully and fluidly that
wonderful design.
He's just so graceful.
He's just like such a perfect little, perfect, historical American Methodist type.
Yes, everyone loves those. The thing about his design, though, while watching him, he looks like a cousin of Kuzco from The Emperor's New Groove, and also a little bit like maybe what Pinocchio would look like all grown up.
You're not wrong. I think I remember reading that he was actually a collaboration between 3 of Disney's star animators.
That is exactly what I was going to say. Milt Kahl, Ollie Johnson, and Eric Larson all joined in. They were directing animators for the Johnny, so that is why he moves so beautifully. It is not a normal thing, though, I think, for so many animating directors to work on one character.
Especially for a short.
That's why it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd actually watched this short before. Obviously, I vaguely remember learning about Johnny Appleseed as a character, and the song that he sings at the beginning, the Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord, and so on and so forth. That was how a family that I knew and would occasionally have dinner with would say their prayers at the beginning of every meal.
That's adorable. And also kind of weird.
They were adorable and also kind of weird.
Okay. Well, I hope they're not listening. But also if you're paying attention to the backgrounds, everything looks like a little golden book.
Yeah.
Because also Mary Blair.
Yeah. She's all over this one.
But it's absolutely gorgeous. Like the apple trees kind of forming this fluffy cotton candy snake up into heaven.
Yeah. Oh, I love the description. Apple blossom clouds is just such a great way to describe a certain kind of cloud on a certain kind of perfect day.
Also, snakes of cotton candy is my new favorite phrase.
I saw Snakes of Cotton Candy open for Rush in 1983.
I'm so glad I'm here. I'm so glad I invited me here today. Okay, another thing about Johnny is that he is voiced by this guy named Dennis Day, who we all have not heard of because he was a radio star on Jack Benny's radio show starting in 1939. So Dennis Day was an Irish singer, and he was very famous for this kind of naive, innocent kid that he would play for comedic effect on Jack Benny's show, which is why he got this part as Johnny, because he's so sweet and naive and just wants to make the world a better place and doesn't know if he's, real fit to do much of anything, but he just wants to do a good job. Oh, adorable. Fun fact is that Verna Felton, our elephant matriarch from Dumbo, she will play the fairy godmother in Cinderella and the Queen of Hearts. She was Dennis's overbearing mother on the Jack Benny show, so everybody works together in Hollywood. It's a very small town. The thing about Dennis Day that I wanted to tell you is that he is so versatile with his dialects and impressions that he actually does the voices of Johnny, the guardian angel, and the old settler in this short. He's just playing everybody.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah.
Why do you need to hire anyone else for anything?
Apparently they did not.
All Disney movies from this point on should be voiced by Dennis Day. Make the credits of these movies much shorter.
I mean, he is no longer with us, so we would not make many more movies if that was the case. But he was quite good at what he did.
Well, according to the theology of this short, that is probably what he's doing in heaven.
Probably.
Let's all take a step over to Nathan's Corner for a moment. I actually very much approve of and enjoy the theology of this Disney short. It is very much in line with current New Testament scholarship, which is focusing on and emphasizing the way in which our particular capitalist consumerist vision of heaven as a passive place where we are departed from our bodies doesn't really match the New Testament's vision of life after death, which is a new heaven and new earth created by God that we get to participate in and be creative agents within. So it is perfectly reasonable for Johnny Appleseed to go after his death into a new world where he will plant the best apple trees imaginable forever.
It is a little disconcerting that he dies at the end of this short, though.
Well, so it's a biopic. That's where you gotta end up.
I just don't think all biopics do this, especially ones that are so short. But yeah, they went there.
He passes away. It's a white-haired old man, and he's just very upset because that means he can't plant any more apple trees.
Thank goodness that guardian angel is so much smarter than he is and gets Johnny interested in going to heaven by telling him that they are lacking in apple trees, and there's a lot of work to be done there. I have one question for you, Nathan. Apple pickles?
Apple pickles. I mean, I've never had one, but mango pickles are excellent. Ugh. So I'm willing to give it a shot.
No. Is this a thing that people do in the South though? Is this
I've never heard of it.
They were very excited about apple pickles. In their lists of what you can do with apples and why apples are so great, which I don't agree with based on our original first episode. But
Alexa's an apple hater. She doesn't even like apple pie.
I don't hate apples. I just don't get excited about apples, and I don't want them warm. Why would you make them warm? So I really don't get apple pickles. I'm glad that seems to have gone away.
I mean, it's not a thing in the South, but this short does more so take place in the Midwest. So who knows what they're doing up in the Midwest? I got no idea.
All right. Well, someone tell me about your apple pickles and how great they are.
You can pickle anything. And you know what? A lot of things you wouldn't expect to turn out to be delicious pickles.
You can pickle everything, but should you? I mean, you really should think beforehand. Be responsible with your pickling.
That sounds like an excellent YouTube channel. You can pickle everything, but should you?
I think the answer on that YouTube channel is mostly no. All right. On to Little Toot.
Can't we talk about Johnny Appleseed a little bit more? I don't really want to talk about Little Toot.
It is.
What did you think of Little Toot?
It was fine. I think I liked it probably as a kid because I vaguely remember watching it, but this time around I did not really enjoy it. It's based on a book written and illustrated by Hardy Gramatke, who is a former Disney animator and acclaimed watercolorist. He used to watch the tugboats outside on the East River in New York, made himself a cute little kid's book about tugboats. I'm sure the book is great. I'm sure the book is better than the movie, actually.
It always is.
I love the Andrews sisters, and I think that they do a beautiful job. I'm just a sucker for 3-part harmonies. Mm-hmm. And I think, honestly, my favorite part was not necessarily what was the art on screen, but as Little Toot is being banished and having to go through the rough, choppy seas and all the buoys, there isn't real Foley. It's the Andrews sisters singing the Foley of the buoys
it's
out there,
creepy,
and it's so creepy, and I think that's really well done.
Except in 3-part harmony.
Yeah, except in 3-part harmony, and way better, and it also really does mimic the kind of sounds of buoys on the ocean. I'll try to find a clip to link to. I did find it funny how quickly things escalated from Little Toot trying to help his dad to spinning a battleship or a cruise liner out of control so badly that it ends up in the middle of city skyscrapers on fire. Which also makes me wonder what the moral of this story is supposed to be. Is you might be so completely terrible and useless that no matter how much you try to help, you will just be terrible. So you better do one thing in your life that will buy you back the love you lost.
I actually think the moral is not for Little Toot. The moral here is for the adults in Little Toot's life, because you can't teach children morals without also teaching them wisdom. Because they all his dad yells at Little Toot for playing around and not getting enough, not being serious and not getting work done. So Little Toot tries to help out and get some work done, but his dad hasn't actually taught him how to do anything well or make smart choices. Don't just teach your kids morals. Teach them wisdom.
Okay. I will.
But, yeah, I feel like this is a particular genre of Disney short that doesn't do a whole lot for me, which is like, what if vehicles but babies? There is a lot of those. The one from Saludos Amigos about the Pedro the baby plane. Yeah, didn't really do anything for me. I'm not that interested in learning how vehicles grow up to be better vehicles.
Did you go through a phase when you were a kid about being really into like cars and Tonka trucks and things like that?
I did, but in a very revealing fact about myself, I was given a whole bunch of Hot Wheels at one point as a kid, and I immediately gave them all names, personalities, and superpowers, and played with them like I did my superhero action figures.
Very nice. Very nice. I feel like I did a similar thing with my brother's cars, because no one bought me any Hot Wheels or Legos or, yeah. Oh, okay, I did get one set of Legos. They were pink.
Of course they were.
But since I had a little brother, I got to play with all the cool boy toys. And there were a lot of cool Hot Wheels. And they had names and personalities and probably got married and went shopping together. All right, moving on to trees.
Trees!
Which is a better version of that Make My Music short without you.
Yeah.
That one was terrible.
What is the
It's like what this wanted to be.
I admit that I have never seen a poem as lovely as a tree. And I admit that I have never seen a tree short as lovely as trees.
It's very nice. So it's based on a famous poem by Joyce Kilmer, written in 1913, which is a very long time ago.
They've been writing poetry for thousands of years. 1913 is pretty much contemporary.
And this was also intended for Fantasia. Were they to make another one?
It's just a really lovely piece. It's got shades of the old mill in the way that it captures the natural world and moves through cycles of storms and seasons. But whereas the old mill is Disney trying to be as realistic and true to life as possible, this has a very distinct look and feel and stylization of the animals in the world. And the trees are just such fascinating shapes and colors. It's just gorgeous.
Yes, I feel like while watching it, it's just like, oh, the animators must have been thinking, hey, we're really good at deer now.
We did a whole movie about deer.
Throw some deer in it.
And the deer are beautiful.
They are gorgeous and lovely. It's very nice.
It's a very nice piece. And as you talked earlier about the way that the Bumblebee sequence kind of just has a unique way of transitioning from one piece to the next. It's sort of hard to describe, but it's set up so that every scene then becomes a layer in the next scene. Like you pull out of this particular vista of trees and it turns out to be a reflection in a drop of water on a leaf in the new sequence of trees. And so you just sort of feel like you're just going through layers and layers of worlds of forests, and it's quite entrancing.
Yeah, I feel like I really appreciated how much love and thought was put into this one, as opposed to Without You, the Make My Music short, that was just kind of a pan in, wait for 3 minutes, and then pan out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one has some, good old-fashioned multiplane and all kinds of delicate, smart camera movements.
So I think it's based on the pastel story art of Dick Kelsey, who's a Disney stylist, and that guy I mentioned earlier, Ken O'Connor, he uses cells with kind of a frosted surface so that he can get the vibrancy and texture from the original pastel story sketches to come to the screen, and that's why it's kind of fuzzy.
Oh yeah, no, I remember thinking particularly about the squirrels in this sequence. They almost are like just moving brushes of paint along the screen. And yeah, now that I think about it, they are like, it's like pastels come alive.
My brain broke trying to figure out how in the world you animate those.
One of the things I really like about this piece is that it is scored to a choral arrangement of the poem trees, which is done by Oscar Rasbach. And that's actually one of my favorite genres of music. Is a lot of choral writers and arrangers love to take pieces of poetry and then flesh them out and give them harmony and melody and lush choral soundscapes. You get this sometimes with renditions of E. Cummings or Gerard Manley Hopkins. And it's produced some really beautiful choral pieces over the years, and this is a lovely rendition of Trees.
And you can also thank Fred Waring and his Pennsylvanians for singing that chorus for you.
And his Pennsylvanians.
That is the name of their troupe, apparently.
It should have been a snake of cotton candy.
That's what I'm naming my band. Don't take it from me. It was very beautiful. However, I had no idea what they were saying.
That is often a problem with the choral arrangement of poem genre.
So I feel like I didn't necessarily get the poem part. That seems to be a really big portion of this short. But apparently this short was, broken off from this movie and distributed to schools in America as a, hey, instead of reading poems, you can listen to them / watch them. How often can you watch a poem?
Now you can. So, shall we move on then to Blame It on the Samba?
I will.
A reunion of sorts for our Saludos Amigos and
only some
Three
of them.
Caballeros friends.
Well, not the Three Caballeros. It's only Donald, Jose Carioca, and the Aracuan bird.
Yeah. Panchito does not make an appearance.
I absolutely loved the Aracuan bird, and I was very disappointed that he didn't have more of a role in the Three Caballeros, so I was very excited for him to be back and to have...
He does more in this short than I think he did in the other films he's appeared in.
I assumed that he was very popular, and so they decided to do some more with him.
So was this like a lost segment from those films?
Essentially, yes. It was intended to be part of a Latin American feature, a third one. They had recorded Ethel Smith, the organist, playing this song, and so when they decided to recycle it, they had her come back in and actually record the live action version so that they could put Donald and Jose and the Aracuan bird kind of around her.
And I will say, the live-action animation integration in this one is so much better than it was in the Latin American films. It's really sophisticated, really well done. In fact, this short overall is, better than 75% of those films.
I mean, to be fair, she doesn't really have to physically interact with them a whole lot. She mostly just has to kind of look at them and, smile.
But the characters interact with the organ itself in really interesting ways, up to and including the part where they blow it up and she reassembles it with sheer force of will.
That's woman power. What I actually kind of loved is that when Donald and Jose are dancing on top of the organ while she plays it, they are the actual size that you would expect kind of like a duck and a parrot to be.
That's true. I didn't think about it that way.
Normally, cartoon characters interacting with humans are a little more 3 feet big, but they were actually the size of a duck. Mm-hmm. I love that the Aracuan bird is so magical that he can set fire underwater. They spend most of this short underwater.
It's a bit trippy. They at some point come into the Aracuan's cafe and he serves them a glass of wine, which they then dissolve into and have a psychedelic experience with Ethel Smith and her organ.
That sounds like a terrible sentence. No. Oh, not that kind of organ.
Oh, yeah.
An electric organ.
An electric organ.
An electric Hammond organ. I learned that.
Mm-hmm. The best kind of organ. The best kind of electric organ.
I mean, it's a delightful, upbeat piece.
They start off sad, and then they samba, and they get happy.
It is true. What I really, really appreciated about this, though, is that while we've been talking about Mary Blair a lot throughout this movie, and you look at the backgrounds happening, it's very, peak Mary Blair, but very much in that same vein of Alice in Wonderland and a little bit of Peter Pan, and, you can definitely see how we're going to be moving in that direction, and it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's a little less vivid than, the best pieces from Saludos Amigos and Three Caballero in terms of its imagery, but it's got really great energy, really great colors, and the interaction with Ethel Smith is really dynamic and interesting, and I really enjoyed this one.
And that brings us to the final segment, the biggest whopper of them all at a full 22 minutes. I did not appreciate it, but Nathan maybe did.
It went on for a bit. It's true.
It's time to talk about Pickles Bill.
Pecos Bill.
Is that how you're supposed to say it? Pecos?
Pecos Bill.
Pecos.
He is just the tallest tail in the state of Texas.
You know what?
What?
Actually, I did my research.
Did you?
So, the first known stories published about Pecos Bill are in 1917 by this guy named Edward O'Reilly. And I thought that the problems I had with this piece I had with Disney. I have problems with Edward O'Reilly. Okay, so they appeared in the Century magazine. They were reprinted in a book called The Saga of Pecos Bill. And
No. Pecos.
Pecos.
Pecos Bill.
Pecos. No, Pecos. So O'Reilly claimed that they were an oral tradition of the tales that cowboys were telling around the fires as they went westward into Texas and California and Arizona and all those other places. But the American folklorist Richard M. Dorson has said that O'Reilly completely invented these stories and sold them as quote-unquote folklore. So writers after him borrowed O'Reilly's tales and either changed them up a little bit or they added completely new tales and it just kind of grew from there.
Well, folktales gotta start somewhere, don't it? And if people continue to develop it and build on it and start telling it to other people, then I'd say it is a successful Texan folktale.
He sits on a throne of lies.
I mean, most folktales do.
All right, so is Pecan? Is Pecan Bill something you grew up with?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of clear memories, but it's one of those stories that gets told, especially to children. I sort of slot him in the same category as John Henry and Johnny Appleseed as well, sort of Americana folktales.
Okay, I feel like there's a difference between the things that we line up for our classrooms, because we definitely did not learn about Pecos Bill in our Californian classrooms growing up, but we did learn about John Henry and we did learn about Johnny Appleseed. So I was wondering if that is just something that's on kind of the teacher's roster in Texas.
I would venture to guess it is more likely to show up in a Texas folktale lesson. Anyway, original folklore aside, this sort of starts off as what looks to be another nature piece, where you're just kind of moving through the desert and it's your usual bit of Disney, look at this stark American landscape and how well we can render it. And then when you feel like, okay, all right, well, we're getting to the close of this, the short is just getting started.
It was a very long song about nothing.
So then we get this bunch of live-action cowboys led by people who I assume were famous at the time.
Roy Rogers and his horse Trigger and the Sons of the Pioneers. I know we've had, obviously, Ethel Smith as a live human inside an animation in the previous piece, but this was really disconcerting for me when all of a sudden we happened upon a live-action camp with, 20 humans in it. Not animated humans, but live-action humans just in the middle of an animated piece.
Yeah, well, and it's actually kind of an interesting the wide shot of the camp is a live action, I assume probably studio desert set that is just kind of placed within a drawing of a desert. It's an interesting little piece of integration. I actually thought it looked quite lovely from a distance. But yeah, then we spend a lot of time just with live action actors, and it began to feel a little bit Edgar Bergen at the beginning of Mickey and the Beanstalk.
Yes. I mean, when I say disconcerting, I'm not meaning that it was just boring, which it was that too, but when all of a sudden we pan the camera left and there's just a bunch of humans sitting there, that was just, really weird for me. My brain would not accept it. It broke the suspension of belief for me.
Yeah, you can have a cartoon character in a real world. You can have a real person in a cartoon world. It's a bit weird to have a real world inside of a cartoon world. Yeah,
so that didn't really work for me. But around this fireplace, as we mentioned before, Roy Rogers and his kind of posse. And they are telling the tale of Pecos Bill to some faces you might recognize.
I recognize the little girl as the same little girl from the Edgar Bergen segment in Mickey and the Beanstalk.
Yeah, her name's Luana Patton. Mm-hmm. And the little boy that she's with is named Bobby Driscoll.
Where should I recognize him from?
Well, we're going to stop for a guess who so you can find out.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to make this easy on you.
Okay.
Kind of. Luana Patton and Bobby Driscoll are both in one live-action / animated movie from the 1940s. Can you name it?
It's probably either Bedknobs and Broomsticks or Pete's Dragon.
No.
I don't know. What am I missing?
Luana Patton plays Virginia Ginny Favors in Song of the South.
Oh.
And well, Bobby Driscoll plays Johnny in Song of the South.
I'm sorry I didn't recognize them from this film, which I have never seen and I'm not allowed to see.
Well, you would recognize Luana Patton.
Mm-hmm.
Other reasons you should recognize Bobby Driscoll. Hang on, wait for it. So he's Jeremiah Kincaid in So Dear to My Heart. He's Jim Hawkins in Disney's Treasure Island from 1950. Adorable child. And also, he is Peter Pan.
The voice of Peter Pan?
He is the voice of Peter Pan, and he is also the reference model for all of the close-ups. So Peter Pan is literally based on how he looks. There's some really great pictures on the internets.
There are some really great pictures on the internet.
You should check out the internet sometimes. They got some good stuff. But there are some really cool pictures, and I'll see if I can find a link to a good one of him in all the Peter Pan get-up and on stage and whatnot. And like they really pulled from his like facial structure and everything, and it's very cool. So yeah. Do note though, I have like a caveat that the Peter Pan's model for like dancing and choreography was actually a different guy whose name is Roland Dupree. So different people pulled together for different needs on Peter Pan. But he's Peter Pan.
Oh, he probably elongates a little bit between this film and Peter Pan, huh?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, it's a weird little segment. Goes on for a while. And the Sons of the Pioneers I actually found really entertaining in the sense that it seems like Roy Rogers is just trying to tell a story and the Sons of the Pioneers keep like jumping in with song.
I mean, if that's not how I live my life. Yeah, I mean, there was a really fun portion where I think that the hyperbole of the tall tales was a lot of fun for animation. Like we talked about before, of how big Texas is pushing out the other states, and the funny things about Pico's Bill lassoing a tornado or digging the Rio Grande.
Can I take a moment to relate to you my favorite made-up Southernisms from this film? Such classic nonsense phrases as homeless as a poker chip.
And then been getting sons.
Hungrier than a woodpecker with a headache. Well, he just outloped the antelope. And, well, isn't he just happy as a hog in a turnip patch? I love little Southern nonsensisms.
Oh, Sandy Cheeks makes so much more sense now.
Sandy Cheeks?
From SpongeBob.
Oh, yeah. That's totally what Sandy in SpongeBob does.
Do people in the South do this?
I've never encountered it in real life, but Southern characters in fiction do it all the time.
Huh. Very strange.
And it's delightful. The 90s X-Men animated cartoon had Rogue, their like stereotypical Southern character, doing all kinds of these phrases, and they're wonderful.
They don't make any sense.
That's what's beautiful about them.
You're going to love Alice in Wonderland then.
Anyway.
Then we get out of the kind of fun portion, and then we go into the longer... Everything is long. Then we get into the meat of the story, or we get into Pico Spill's love story, and frankly, it's a story not worth telling.
Yes, Pecos Bill's horse, Widowmaker, serves the Timon and Pumbaa role in this short as he is really regretful that Pecos Bill is leaving him to romance a woman. And you know what? Widowmaker's got it right this time.
Oh, we're just going to skip completely over talking about Slewfoot Sue? We're just going to jump right into getting married?
I was just queuing you up for like why this romance is a bad idea.
I mean... We have to stop and talk about Slewfoot Sue, who is from a completely different short.
Yeah, she's not from a short, she's from a pinup magazine.
Yes. It annoys me how beautiful she is. Because she's actually a really beautiful design. But she doesn't belong in this short next to Pecos Bill, who looks like an ugly Looney Tune.
With surprisingly graceful balletic legs.
Him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't notice. I was too busy being angry about everything else.
Tell me, what is it that makes you angry about Slewfoot Sue?
Why doesn't she have, like, real pants? I don't understand why she's wearing a mini skirt while she's... It's cool that she's riding a catfish, but that wasn't, like, Disney's thing. That's the original story, that she somehow tames a catfish and rides it. Which, when she came on screen, honestly, my thought was, hey, I don't really care about this Pecos Bill guy. I want to know more about her and her backstory, and how did she come to be riding catfish, because that's kind of awesome. But it'd be nice if we weren't going directly to shots of her, you know, opening her compact to fix her makeup.
What does Slewfoot even mean?
I'm so glad you asked. Slewfoot is defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary as having big, clumsy, or turned out feet.
I don't feel like the character designer got that note.
So, thanks, Merriam-Webster, and also, thanks, Edward O'Reilly. Thanks. I have problems with you.
He's probably dead. You're going to say serves him right?
No. I was not. Anyway, so their romance is not much worth mentioning.
It's basically all a big cue up to the traditional folk hero ending where they are good at everything except the moment when it really counts.
He chokes. Well, he doesn't actually.
It's Casey at the bat all over again.
Ugh. So, Slewfoot Sue and Pecos Bill want to get married, but there are two things that Slewfoot Sue wants before they can get married. One of which is she wants a big old bustle for her bum.
The real moral of this story, which we're going to get to, is that bustles are a terrible idea. Why did we ever invent them?
Actually, I think they're really cool. I'm not saying, like, we should bring them back, but, like, it is a really interesting historical thing, and you have to know a lot of costume history to understand the bustle. I have too many years of it, so we're not going to make this a costume history podcast, but, like, there were a lot of things before the bustle that led to the bustle. It's not like it came out of nowhere and everyone's just like, we need bustles now. But we are always trying to accentuate the woman's hips throughout history, and that's why things like bustles and hoop skirts and things take an uptick in popularity for a very, very long time.
All right, we're going to release a bustle bonus episode.
Anyway, so it's not crazy for her to want a bustle, and I judge her not for wanting a bustle, because if I had the chance to wear a really cool dress with a bustle in it, I would be so there. Mm-hmm. The thing I don't understand...
You can do that any day of your life.
No, would have to spend a lot of money to do that. Cannot do that.
You can do that any day of your life after you're rich.
Yes, precisely. The thing that doesn't make sense is that she wants to wear the bustle while also trying to ride Widowmaker, who is the horse that won't let anyone except Pecos Bill ride him. And these two things together don't make a whole lot of sense.
Long story short...
She gets on top of Widowmaker, who really doesn't want her to ride him, and I just feel like consent should have been asked for before we started this. So, of course, he starts bucking around and trying to throw her off, and he succeeds, and he throws her so high into the air that they all think she's going to die upon impact hitting the ground. But no, my friends, her bustle hits the ground, and thankfully... it bounces her back up into the sky, except higher than before, and thus Slewfoot Sue begins to bounce. And bounce.
But luckily, we have the best lassoer in all of Texas here, and he can save her.
Too bad it's not enough.
It is his Amartia. He is destined to fail. His tragic flaw.
Maybe this is what Once Upon a Wintertime was foreshadowing in the original short.
Men are buffoons and cannot save women.
Absolutely useless.
And in this case, the horse is against the woman, so she has no hope.
I mean, the reason he doesn't lasso her in this short is because Widowmaker steps on the end of the rope, so it falls short instead of catching her. So she bounces so high that she lands on the moon and is stuck there forever. And now the reason that coyotes howl is because Pecos Bill is so sad that he howls and they howl with him. The end.
And Pecos Bill joined Sokka from Avatar The Last Airbender in the club of my girlfriend turned into the moon.
I did not think about that. That is an amazing connection. Thank you for that. I mean, this isn't a great ending. There are definitely better... There are so many versions of this ending, apparently. In other popular versions, Bill and Sue are united because he does lasso her down. They live happily ever after. There's a version where he does lasso her, but she's so traumatized by the experience that she never speaks to Pecos Bill again. And there's yet another version, and, look out for this one. It's not great. She can't stop bouncing. Bill can't stop her from bouncing either. He decides that, well, she's just going to starve, so I better put her out of her misery. So I'm glad we didn't get that ending.
Well.
So apparently my problem is just, with Edward O'Reilly and, whatever.
Well, if it's an alternate version of the story, then it's probably not Edward O'Reilly. It's probably the folk tale as it has developed among the folk.
I have a problem with the folks.
Are you saying you have a problem with Texas?
I do. They keep trying to feed me dairy, and I cannot eat dairy. I can't. It's bad for me. Yeah, so I'm not a fan of this one, which is essentially teaching us the moral that your fashion choices will be the doom of you. How dare you, woman, want one pretty thing in your entire life?
One could also make the case that the moral of the story is, make sure that your friends and your significant others get along, or bad things are going to happen.
But I don't think that's what the short is trying to say. Also, the fact that Pecos Bill runs to California to steal rain clouds and bring them back to Texas made me laugh, because that is not how that works.
No. You don't run to California to get the rain, unless you're running to San Francisco.
He did not run to San Francisco. I just found that hilariously funny as we got out of, a 9-year drought or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any water to spare. Go somewhere else.
Maybe
run to Washington.
Maybe when this film was made, we weren't quite so drought-ridden.
Okay, so we have only one more package film. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
One more. Yeah. And then Cinderella.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be beautiful. Hang in there. You can do it. I am so proud of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for keeping up with us. Thank you for potentially having watched this movie with us. We are in it with you. If you enjoyed listening to our podcast, it would be really great if you could please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever your preferred podcast player is. You can write us at retroscoping@gmail.com if you want to tell us how much you loved or hated this movie. And if you want to find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, we are at Retroscoping. And please join us next time for the adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Now go live happily ever after.
I really enjoyed this one.
Me too.
The 2.5 Caballeros are better in small doses.
I'm actually a size 2.5 Caballeros, not a whole 3 Caballeros.